Before we talk about literature reviews, let's talk about the current state of scientific research. Essentially, investigations across numerous research fields, from psychology to cancer biology to neuroscience to a lot of other fields, have shown that a lot of scientific research doesn't replicate. So, if you Google the replication crisis in psychology or replication crisis in science, you're going to find a lot of interesting data that shows basically that when researchers take a previously published study and use the best methods with a lot of participants and they try to replicate this study, only 50% of them replicate. So that means that any single article that you read has a 50% chance, based on our best estimates, of just being wrong, right? Not replicable, not real. So I hope this rocks your world a little bit because you can't trust individual articles. And you're probably saying, well, what do I need to do as a young scientist? Well, number one, you need to change your mentality. A bunch of older, no talent clowns have ruined our fields by taking shortcuts. There's a lot of reasons for this: financial gain, fame, stuff like that. But you ultimately need to stop looking to us as this ultimate authority, even myself. And you need to realize that science has one goal: truth. And good data is good science. So ultimately, you need to start elevating yourself to this level. Like, if the scientists that came before you did it all wrong, you can't really trust us anymore. And I'm okay with that. Change your mentality. Number two, you need to stop writing these horrible papers where you find one article to support your claim and you think you found truth. Based on what we know, that one article is 50% likely to be wrong. Two articles, 25% likely that the conclusion is wrong. Three articles, 12.5%. Four articles, 6.75%. And only five articles does it drop less than 5% to 3.375. So what you need to do is not trust anything unless it replicates at least 5 times. You'll learn why later on in the semester. I'm trying to keep this lecture short, but ultimately, don't trust anything that doesn't replicate 5 times. Also, if you're doing a lit review and you know the conclusion before you do it, you're being a bad scientist. You're being like all these other folks that came before you that were doing non-replicable research. So you shouldn't know the conclusion of your lit review until you completely do it. So how do you do a lit review and find truth? I have a hack for this because you could imagine reading every article in the field and how long that would take you. It would be horrible. You're going to do a systematic search. You're going to choose a database, likely PsycInfo or PubMed. You're going to choose a set of keywords. And from those set of keywords in that database, you're going to get a scientific sampling of scientific research articles. In that sampling, you're gonna examine that sampling of articles. Specifically, you're gonna read all the abstracts. For each abstract that you read, you're going to have an Excel file with 2 columns, one that's a citation column and one that's an abstracted conclusion column. So I read an article by Pettigrew 2006 that showed that contact reduces prejudice. That's all that's going to be in my Excel file. Okay? And you're going to have one of these Excel files for your final project. You don't have to do one for homework, so just relax. Then, after I completely read all the abstracts based on my search and my question, I'm going to only keep the conclusions that replicate 5 times. So if I do not find that contact reduces prejudice across 5 different studies, I can't assume it's true. I'm not going to assume it's true. I'm not going to think it's true. I'm not going to base my research assuming this idea is true. But if I find it replicates 5 times, I'm going to assume it's true, right? Well, I'm probably going to find 5, 6, maybe 7 ideas like this, these abstracted conclusions that are true. And then my job is just to make what I call a concept map that links the truths together. Now, what's a concept map? Right? I think Charlie Day represents a concept map right here. But essentially, it's like, okay, if contact reduces, let's say I found 2 things. Contact reduces prejudice, education reduces prejudice. I have a choice, right? I have to make a kind of like a theory and some hypotheses. For me, I think education reduces prejudice because education leads to contact and that reduces prejudice. It's a very simple concept map, but what it would be one box that says contact or education, excuse me, an arrow going to contact. That's another box. And finally, a third arrow going to reduction in prejudice or prejudice, however you want to write it. But ultimately, what you have to do is just make a concept map. Now, what is a concept map? Well, it's basically a theory and hypotheses all in one. It's a theory in sort of the basic sense because you have articles that have been shown to replicate multiple times, and thus, we think they're true. It's sort of like the way they talk about a theory in biology. Now, not as strict, but still that same general idea. I'm saying, hey, it replicates 5 times. I think it's true, right? But also, I had to put them together in a specific way, and those are my hypotheses. And sometimes you might even have to add boxes that are complete hypotheses. So ultimately, a concept map is your theory and your hypotheses all in one. And so it's the thing you're trying to prove correct or trying to test or whatever you want to, however you want to think about it. So, what is your homework for today? It's like you see the goal, you're going to have to reach that goal for your final project. But here's what I want you to do: choose your database. 95% of us is going to be PsycInfo or PubMed. If you have a better database, use it. If I don't, as long as it's a good database, that's fine. If you really have questions about what's the best database for your question, go to the library and ask. I don't care as long as it's one of the major databases that we use. Number 2, add, well, you're going to choose that database. You're going to add your most important keyword. For me, it would be prejudice. And I'm going to note how many articles I get back. So on a Word document for your homework, I'd put a number 1. I would write PsycInfo, prejudice, probably 50,000 results is my guess. I'm not going to do the search right now, but I'm just going to note how many articles I get. My second point, I'm going to add the second most important keyword, and I'm going to use the word and. The Boolean and is going to make a research question more specific. So my next set of keywords is going to be prejudice and medicine. I want you to choose what that is for your question. And do the same thing. We're using the same database. These are our 2 keywords, prejudice and medicine. And how many results did we get? Less. We got a lot less probably. Okay, now I'm going to pause. I'm going to talk about or, the Boolean or. Now use the or Boolean for synonyms. You can see here prejudice or racism, medicine, or healthcare. So I'm looking at the same question, prejudice and medicine, right? It's the same basic question, but I'm adding 2 synonyms, and that's going to broaden my list of articles that I find. I only use or, for some major synonyms like prejudice or racism is probably good enough for my question right now. I think it's going to get me most of the results. But you could imagine prejudice or racism or ethnicity or, right? You can keep building that up and up and up. And then medicine or healthcare professionals or healthcare behavior, right? I can keep doing those ors. And every time I add an or, I'm likely to get a larger and larger pool of articles. So now we've talked about the 2 Booleans. I've shown you to do 2 keywords. I want you to do at least 5 searches where you add 1 new keyword at a time. And you're going to have to use a Boolean with that keyword and or. It's very simple. So all I want you to do 5, choose your database, choose your most important keyword, add it to your search. Choose your second most important keyword, add it to your search. Choose your third most important keyword, add it to your search. Fourth and fifth, and just see where you get. Ultimately, for this project, we're looking for about 150, 250, maybe 300 articles for our final project in here that we have the whole semester to do. But right now, this is your homework.